But first, a rare interview that has sat in the archives for over 30 years.
It's Michael Jackson as many want to remember him before the suffocating fame and accusations of child abuse. By 1977, Jackson had already been in the business for 15 years and he wasn't yet 20.
In New York's once famous Studio 54, he sat down with Molly Meldrum for Countdown.
Paul, new roll, mate. Sorry, roll 2.
This time around, I found a little guy who's a monster on the charts, and his name's Michael Jackson. Michael, welcome to Countdown.
Thank you.
Now, tell me, what do you think is the success of the Jacksons, yourself and the Jacksons?
I would say probably togetherness or just enjoying our work a lot, putting a lot of love into it, all our effort.
You've sprung up a bit since I saw you last.
Yeah. Everybody has.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How have you taken it over the last 5 years? I mean...
Success?
Yeah. Has it affected you much?
In a joyful way, in a rejoicing way, because I love it. You have to like it to be in it this long.
Yeah.
Or you go crazy. It's so much. We've been traveling the world and making records and just having a great time.
Is that togetherness there as far as the
Yes, it is. It is. Lots of togetherness. Very important.
Over in Australia, we've seen you on many of the big shows.
Oh, yeah.
And your little sister's been on a few of them.
Oh, yeah.
She's a funky little sister. Move along.
She is funky.
She's amazing. But, I mean, the demand on you has been amazing, sort of, as far as, like, you've had to go into an adult world, more or less. I mean, did you find that hard to cope with, Michael?
You mean as far as our music?
Yeah, and the demand as far as you having to go on all these shows and sort of really compete against the adults as far as hosting things and things like that.
No, it's part of the business, and it comes at you all the time. It's up to you whether you want to do or not. So we do whatever we can.
When you were out in Australia, and I remember we actually presented you with the footy, you at that stage were sort of groaning a little because you had a few lectures to do. You had to keep up with your schoolwork and things like that. Do you regret having to keep up with your schoolwork?
No, I enjoy it. I love to read and learn and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This current single is becoming a huge hit in the States, and no doubt it'll be a hit in Australia, called Going Places. I think the one thing over the past 5 years since I've seen you, Michael Jackson's certainly gone places.
Thank you.
We hope that you and your family come down to Australia soon and do another
we
tour.
love Australia.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Molly Meldrum joins us now. Molly, what do you remember about that day?
Well, it was preceding. We're in New York, and I was there to do a lot of Countdown interviews. And Quincy Jones, who was a friend of mine, had played me a couple of tracks off this forthcoming album, right? So I contacted CBS Epic at the time, which was now Sony, and said, you know, I'd like to do this interview with Michael Jackson. I know he's in town doing The Wiz. And they more or less said, well, I wouldn't bother about that. I wouldn't have it as a priority because he's not with the Jacksons and it may not work, you know. So anyway, they agreed to do it. And it was very cold, very, very cold in New York. And it was the last interview for the day. It was supposed to be around about 6 o'clock. We were running really quite late. And it was blizzardly cold. And I said to Grant Will, my producer at the time, I said, he's not going to be there, you know. And we pulled up, and there huddled in the corner by himself, no record people, no nothing, was Michael Jackson, you know.
He had so much innocence back then, didn't
Absolutely. The thing that actually surprised me, though, and I remember this initially, when he finally came out of the corner and then went into the thing where you'd always thought of little Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5. He was 19 at the time by now, and he was tall, you know, which sort of threw me, you know. But he still had that wonderful thing where he giggles in that and he talks about his sister and that. And yeah,
and also about growing up. I mean, your question to him was so pointed about growing up in an adult world.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that that's the same 19-year-old that we've seen in the last few years with all the child abuse accusations.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that if you looked back then, and then that was prior to Off the Wall he became a major star. When Thriller happened, then it was like in Michael Jackson's stratosphere, you know. But Jermaine, his brother, who's a great friend of mine, would often tell me where, back when he was growing up, where the rest of the boys would go out and play basketball or whatever, Joe, his father, would insist Michael had to stay inside, rehearse, and also just watching television. And he was watching, like, The Partridge Family, My Three Sons, Leave It to Beaver. And at that stage, you know, back then, there were no Afro-American actors in any of those sitcoms, so he started thinking the only way he would make it in the world was to be white, you know. So he had no childhood and thinking those sort of things, you know.
No childhood. The family's invited you to the funeral, I believe. You're
going?
Yeah,
I've been asked to go over, yes.
I hope it all goes well, Molly.
Thanks. Take care, mate.
Now let's go to Monique Wright outside Michael Jackson's family home. Monique, even in a town like Hollywood where celebrity dramas are the norm, the death of Michael Jackson's been met with a massive outpouring of grief. What have you been seeing?
It has been quite extraordinary, Chris. I mean, the outpouring is something that this city has never seen on this scale. People seem to be commemorating Michael Jackson's death in one of two ways. One is on the streets, and that is people just breaking into impromptu performances, singing and dancing to Michael Jackson songs. The other way, which is a more sombre way, has been with candlelit vigils. Many fans have been crying and coming to pay respects to any place around LA that had a connection to Michael Jackson.
Now, the focus of this story is turned to the role of Michael's personal doctor in his death. What's the latest there?
Well, that's Dr. Conrad Murray. Now, we know that Dr. Murray was with Michael Jackson at the time that the 911 call came through, and he was administering CPR. Now, police have started interviewing Dr. Murray, and it's believed that Michael Jackson was having daily injections of Demerol. Now, this is a painkiller which we know of in Australia as pethidine. It's often given to women during childbirth. We do know that an overdose of Demerol can cause a cardiac arrest. So police will be investigating this during the coming weeks and months, but there's a lot more for us to find out about those final days and weeks of his life.
Now, Monique, in the past few hours, a woman who claims to be a former nanny for Michael Jackson's children's come forward. What's she had to say?
This woman is Grace Rawamba. She claims to have worked for Michael Jackson for the last 17 years. And some of her claims paint a very dark picture of Michael Jackson. She's saying on his drug abuse that she had to pump his stomach on several occasions. She had to keep the children away from him at certain times. She's saying that when she tried to intervene and get help quite recently, he accused her of betraying him and refused to let her have anything to do with the children. She's also saying that in the days leading up to his death, she received information that the children were being neglected, that their rooms weren't being cleaned because he failed to pay the housekeeper. She's also saying that in just hours after his death, she received a call from Michael Jackson's mother, Catherine, asking if she knew where he'd stashed any cash in the mansion. Now, if these claims are true, and I need to point out that none of them are proven at this time, but they are quite extraordinary, and they're painting a picture that I'm sure that many fans here wouldn't want to believe.
Monique, we haven't seen media attention like this since Princess Diana died, and even in death, Michael can't escape attention.
You're absolutely right. He just proved such an irresistible figure for, in particular, the paparazzi. Now, we went out on the road last night with Giles Harrison. He's one of LA's best-known paparazzi photographers and spent a lot of time camped outside Michael Jackson's LA home. Now, he said that in all of Hollywood, Michael Jackson was his most bankable star. He also said that apart from the Jackson's personal entourage, it was the paparazzi that knew best about his movements, and that the only reason that he would ever leave the house was for one of three things: to go to see his doctor, to go to the music studio, or to go on one of his famous shopping sprees. Let's have a listen to what Giles Harrison had to say. How much was a picture of Michael Jackson worth?
It was all varying degrees of what a picture of Michael Jackson was actually worth. It was anywhere from $100 to several thousands of dollars. Obviously, the people who got pictures yesterday when the ambulance was coming out and any images of him inside the ambulance